Hi there, it's Catherine, your lawyer friend and guide, and this is the #1 podcast for legal careers in Japan. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Lawyer on Air podcast. I'm so glad you're here. This episode is all about two things that we sometimes underestimate in our careers: opportunity and support. And more importantly, about how seeking support is truly a strength, not a weakness. My guest today is Associate General Counsel at Microsoft Japan, Yoko Oshima. She believes strongly in raising your hand when the moment calls for it, and in creating opportunities that help others rise too. She's someone who doesn't just talk about leadership, she truly models it and offers a real blueprint for what global leadership can look like when it's grounded in purpose and support. Personally, I've found that the best decisions I've made, the ones that were aligned with my values and helped move me forward, well, those came from a mix of always trusting my gut and talking with my personal board of advisors. Asking for help has not diluted my strength. It's actually totally fortified it. It's helped me stay grounded in my mission, sharpen my direction, and show up more clearly in my work. So in this conversation, we'll talk all about what it really means to support others for success and how creating space for people to grow and allowing yourself to grow by asking for what you need can change everything. If you're figuring out how to ask for what you need and how to sharpen your direction and show up clearly in your work, well, I do offer some paid mentoring to a select few. So DM me for a chat and let's see if we're a fit together. But for now, let's get into the episode with Yoko Oshima. Hello, Yoko, and welcome to the show.
Hello, Catherine. It's my honor to be in this show.
Oh, me too. My honor to have you on. I've been looking forward to having you and speaking together. So we start off with our usual question. Imagine that we are meeting up at your favorite bar or cafe. What drink would you order off the menu and why?
I think I like to order a glass of champagne to cheer with you
Oh,
for celebrating this precious opportunity.
is there a place that you usually go to have champagne, or is anything okay?
Anywhere is okay as long as whom I'm meeting it matters more than where
Oh.
I'm going.
Oh, that's good. It'd be really great to choose somewhere perhaps you and I have not been before. Maybe we could try a new bar together and share that later with people.
Let's definitely do that.
That sounds like fun. Thank you so much. Well, let's get into it. Yoko, you've just had such a strong academic foundation in your past. You got the law degree from Hitotsubashi and University of Tokyo and the LLM that you did in the US. I'm really curious to know, because I've never asked you this question, what brought you into a legal career?
My grandfather has some influence because he was a prosecutor and he had his profession until few weeks before he passed away. So when I think about my career, I thought as a woman I might have some break between my careers. I wanted to be in a profession where I have skill sets that could help me restart when I had some career break. And that was the reason I chose this legal profession.
That's so strategic, really strategic to think about a career break as a motivator. I don't know that I've heard anyone say that before. That's very interesting. And also, your grandfather, I mean, goodness, it sounds like he was working and loved his work. And that must have been inspiring to see somebody so dedicated to a role within the law community as a prosecutor.
I think did enjoy contributing to society. And yes, that had influence on me. Having said that, when I chose this legal career, I almost decided to work for a trading company in my senior year as the career fresh out of college.
Right.
And that time, my grandfather passed away. But if he had been alive, I remember our career discussion, and he at that time was not really recommending legal career,
Oh,
saying that legal career is still male dominated. So he was not sure if that was suitable for me. But my grandfather passed away around my senior year. And then when I was exploring my career, it was my father who sort of encouraged to pursue the career that doesn't have the retirement age.
oh, I see. Because that's very interesting. I was going to ask you if there was perhaps someone like a mentor or an experience or a moment that confirmed that law is what you wanted to do, and perhaps your father's influence there and encouraging you. Not having a retirement date, that's interesting as well. So, would you call your father then very, very instrumental in, I guess, allowing you or letting you or encouraging you to then go and actually do law?
I think you could say that. Now you are putting me back to my senior year at college where I really debated hard whether I should pursue a trading company career where I could get involved in the cross border business transactions or take a chance of taking the bar when the passing rate back then was so low and try this legal career. And my father was working for a company in Japan and had chances to work overseas. And with his experience, him saying, well, working for a company and getting involved in the cross border business is interesting. But he also commented that pursuing the legal career with specific professional skill set could allow me to pursue that career. And now, when I look back, that must have shaped my way of thinking in one way or
Yeah,
the other.
interesting. And you did then decide on law rather than the trading company pathway.
Correct.
You studied and passed all the university studies and began private practice pretty immediately, was it, in Japan?
As you know, Catherine, you pass the bar, you go to the legal institute of training for back then for 2 years, and then you have a choice of being on the judge career or prosecutor career or private practice career. And yes, I chose the private practice career because of my interest in getting involved in the cross-border business.
Yes, right. And you had time in Japan and then actually took yourself over to New York as well to move into another firm. What sort of memories do you have from those days or learnings perhaps in those years?
Many lawyers, after practicing for several years in Japanese law firms, get an opportunity to studies in the US and have 1 year work experience in US or somewhere overseas. But in my case, I ended up leaving the Japanese firm and transferring to a firm in New York after working for a year. And back then, it was because of the September 11th, the
Right.
number of visa decreased by
Yes.
almost like 25%. But my firm, Cleary Gottlieb, kindly supported me in getting the work visa. And because it was such a precious opportunity, I decided to stay. And the reason I decided to transfer was Anderson Mori gave me such great training opportunities. And I think I was able to barely function as a lawyer in New York because of all the trainings that partners and like provided me when I was working at Anderson Mori. But when I worked at Cleary Gottlieb in New York, I got exposed to the cutting edge deals in fund formations and financing. And I thought that I would like to leverage this opportunity to get involved in these cutting edge deals in the center of the finance world in New York. And that was why I stayed.
What's a big memory from those days? It sounds like it's post 9/11. So there must have been a bunch of memories for that particular part of what was going on. But is there something from that time in New York when you were doing those cutting edge deals that really stands out for you?
Well, speaking of the September 11th, the Cleary's office is right in front of Ground Zero. So my commute every day is passing by the Ground Zero, that empty slot. So everybody who works there is reminded of the tragedy of September 11th actually every
Yes.
single day.
Yes.
And in terms of the project, yes, I had the opportunity to work in the private equity fund formations and funds of the funds and so forth. But the most memorable project was representing Iraqi government working on their restructuring of their sovereign debt by collaborating with the US government, including US Treasury. And the reason I had got an opportunity to get involved was there was a partner I wanted to work for a long time, and then I expressed my interest to him that I would love to have a chance to work with him. And then he kindly listened, and then he nodded, and he said he'd let me know if he sees some transactions. And then 2 years later, out of the blue, I got the call from him and said that he would like me to come to his office. And when I went, he shared me about this the government sovereign debt restructuring deal. And I remember when I had met with their central governor and Minister of Finance, they said without restructuring this deal, they would not be able to re-enter the international finance market. And that really daunted me that doing this was just critical for Iraq to be part of the international world and international finance again. And also, it was so great to see how the partner famous for sovereign debt restructuring worked on the deal. I remember right before the discussion, negotiation with the Iraqi government and US government, he made us, all the team, sit with him, and he went through all the scenarios of the discussions and negotiations, and he taught me that thorough preparation, no matter how experienced you are or how knowledgeable you are, is critical. And he taught me a lot among all other partners I had chance to work with.
Oh, it's incredible, right? I mean, you had this, I think, knowing what I know about you now, you're kind of purpose driven. So it was purpose driven for you. You were doing this deal so that you could get Iraq back into the international world and finance world again. It has a purpose to it. There's a meaning for you, right? And then you're seeing the partner on the other side, the person that you really wanted to work with, and you asked them, which I think is super critical, that you actually put your hand up and asked, and he remembered that and asked you into the deal later. But that point of thorough preparation, no matter how experienced you are, is critical. And I'll just give a personal example of that. And that's today, even speaking with you. I've done nearly 100 of these podcasts, and I still prepare for them exactly the same way as I did for the first one. So no matter how far down you get, you're so right. You've just got to be thoroughly prepared. I love that. Amazing memories from those times.
Catherine, about raising my hand, that was something I didn't have to do when I was working for law firm in Japan, Anderson Mori. Because at Anderson Mori, the number of associate was just five of us. New associate in my year was 5 or 6 of us. So the partners reached out to us, and I was just blessed with all the working opportunities, perhaps sometimes too many. But in New York, their number of associates who are entering every year is around 80 or 90. There is a assigning partner who assigns you to certain deals, but if you have someone, partners you are interested in working or some deals you're interested in working, you need to be more proactive not to be buried in that pool. And that was the shift I needed to have when I worked at the law firm in New York.
Right. It's a huge adjustment, isn't it? Culturally and professionally. Somebody has to put their hand up. And it must have been, I would think, quite hard to do at the beginning. It's hard to do any time, but if you're used to being given work and, as you said, blessed with that situation, to then have to express your interest by raising your hand is quite a different cultural shift.
It was indeed. So, legal skill set wise, of course, English was not my native language, and I had to thrive to meet the quality expectations. But I could leverage the legal skill set and legal training I got at the Anderson Mori to be functionable at Cleary Gottlieb. But in terms of quality of English plus this proactiveness was something I needed to learn newly in New York.
Oh, interesting. So your Japan experience obviously came in handy too. So there's a few pieces of the jigsaw fitting together there. Wow, but you came back to Japan after that experience, and I don't believe you went into private practice again. You changed pathways.
Correct. Having worked at Cleary Gottlieb for several years and then seeing partner who was successful but then had to cancel her vacation, for example, to be on a deal because of the call from the client on Friday evening,
Right.
but then got another call for being informed that postponement of the deal. But then when she had the free weekend with
Oh,
family, she already canceled the vacation. So she half jokingly said, well, we may just book a hotel in Manhattan because we happen to have a free weekend. When you hear those stories, like partners are great. But first of all, being partner in New York is very competitive. Only 1 out of 10 could make it. And two, when I see those partner life, I started to wonder if this is something I really like to pursue. And I thought that in-house would have more work-life balance. And that's when I started to at least be open to opportunities outside of law firms, especially in-house positions. And then back then, because of my personal situation and among other things, I started to look for a position in a company that has reputation for a strong legal department and plus strong compliance integrity culture and then has nexus to the US. And I happened to meet someone who was representing GE for the role in Japan, and eventually that was the role I landed.
right. Amazing. And also just to have that person in front of you who was obviously very positive in spite of that situation of missing out on the holiday. That's a learning as well, isn't it? That somebody made a plus or at least had something to laugh about for that situation. But learning that that could be a really difficult pathway if you wanted to, as you do. I know you do a lot of traveling, and that could be quite impactful to be in that kind of role. And I didn't know that
Right.
statistic, 1 out of 10 only getting to be partner. That is hugely competitive. Wow.
Well, it was my rough impression. Usually 90 people every year back then were joining, and only around 10% could make it to
Yeah.
partner.
Amazing. So you did then take up this large role, and you had how many in your team? Was it a team from the beginning that you were looking after? Because I know that through your work, you've had lots of large teams and been involved with building those. So with that company that you started with, did you have a team from the beginning and have to do that as well as, make sure that you were getting into the legal and compliance work as well?
No, when I joined GE, I was hired as a senior counsel working on the strategic transactions,
Hmm.
which seemed to be good use of my skill set. So no, and as you know, as in private practice, I never managed a team. So I started as a solo individual contributor working on the transactions, but then GE Capital, back then called GE Commercial Finance, had the deal where through tender offer bid acquired the commercial finance company Sanyo Credit. And after the acquisition, they formed Commercial Finance Japan, and I was appointed to lead the Japan team. And yes, back then, from individual contributor, I was appointed to be like a legal lead, managing around 20 people back then, both lawyers and non-lawyers, mostly non-lawyers back then.
Right. So, but suddenly it's like literally overnight you're becoming a team leader.
Correct. I was not trained to be a team leader back
So,
then.
how did you approach it? I mean, there must have been maybe at the beginning people gave you some advice, or maybe they didn't, and you had to just get in and do it. What did you do? I mean, I'd love to hear any tips that you have for succeeding to run those teams now that you've done it, looking back, but at the time it must have been quite an impactful experience for you.
It was, as you said, like overnight, I was asked to lead a team and lots of learning, lots of things I could have done differently. And I'm grateful for the team who was patient with me and made suggestions to me to grow as a team leader. But one of the things I should have done, which I didn't back then because I was too busy buried in that situations and like trying to do the things in front of me instead of having the long term strategy or coming up with the North Star, what I should have done, because there are so many role models or so many lawyers who are leading the team, even within GE, I should have reached out to them and asked them about their experiences and their tips. Now, looking back, I could have been more proactive.
Right. So some helped you, but you think you could have done more by asking others proactively.
Correct.
Yeah, but you're right. You're buried in the day-to-day work. You can hardly see, next week because this week is already happening.
Yes. And then when you work in a company after the acquisition, as if you're doing an M&A in private practice, when the deal closed, most of your work is done by that. But the real work for the company started from there, and
Yes.
lots of
Yes.
work was was waiting for us. And also, being a team lead, legal lead means also be part of the G commercial finance management team. And again, that was my first experience being part of the management. And that was also a great journey too. And now I'm sharing my experience. I'm really grateful that the company and my managers gave me that opportunity. And then one of the feedback I got soon after I joined the management team from CEO and HR lead was that they expect me to contribute beyond the legal role and they look forward to hearing my insights in the business or my perspectives outside of the legal advice as well. And that also helped me thinking about the contributions I'm expected to make in my role.
Wow, amazing. And it sounds to me, though, that you never really doubted that you could do it. And I think when people choose you to be a leader, you've already been exhibiting leadership qualities. So you're chosen for that. But did you not have any self doubt or anything come up for you? Or were you more, well, they've obviously chosen me. I'm here. I can do this. They have trust in me. Or did you have some self doubt as well? I guess people always call it the imposter syndrome. I'm not sure if I like that word or not, or that phrase, but how about just doubting yourself? Or did you just push through and no time to have any doubting?
Catherine, thanks for asking that because I have a great episode in that regard.
Please.
Although I was chosen to lead a team and be part of the Japan team, I initially asked to do that role as acting from my end, which at hindsight, I could have shaken myself and say, wait, what?
What are you
Wait,
doing?
yes, exactly. But back then, well, first of all, I had interest. You may recall one of the reasons I chose this like role was so that I could go back to the U.S. at one point. So I wanted to be in a role that has nexus to the U.S. And then back then I thought that I would like to start thinking about my past back to the US within the company transfer. So that's why I was not ready to fully commit. And that was one of the reasons I said, well, could I do acting instead of the real commitment? And two, I thought that I was still in late 30s and I thought I'm still lacking experience and the person who is to do this role should be much more experienced with more maturity. So it was my proposal to the company that I'm happy to try to do this role, but this role should be done by somebody more senior with maturity. So that was my stance. If you see this kind of message coming from a lawyer, then that shows that person's maturity, right? And
Mm.
yes, the company. So I was taking that role as acting.
Ah. How long were you acting for, though?
18 months,
Oh,
a long time. And then a financial crisis happened. Back then, we were looking for two roles, one doing the lead role and one being part of my colleagues, like my peers. And then again, I got another chance. My manager, being APAC General Counsel, asked me because of all the financial crisis situation, they could hire only one instead of two. Then he asked me whether I would vote for hiring somebody more senior to me or somebody, my peer or junior to me. And then guess what, Catherine? Or you think you already know the answer, but
I'm waiting. I'm waiting.
I did say that, well, this team deserves that someone experienced with maturity, so you should hire somebody more senior.
Whoa.
And then my learning was that, yes, that somebody senior came, but I was sort of envisioning somebody senior to me by 10 years or 12 years. And it has turned out that the person was senior to me by several years. And
Right.
then that was my learning that the consequence of my way of thinking that if you are having somebody senior to you, then of course that person decides the strategy and decides the directions, and that's the consequence I have.
Interesting. And so, did that person stay around, or you then realize from this way of thinking it may not be so beneficial for you if you want to go further and things changed?
That was when, well, the talking was once the person came in, I would get transferred to the US. But then, of course, because of the financial crisis, that possibility is no longer around for at least for the time being. And then my manager also asked me, well, Yoko, your transfer is no longer on the table, but will you
Right.
still stay at GE?
Oh,
And well, especially after financial crisis, the market, and I was in
yes.
this, like a finance business. So I said, yes, I would be happy to stay. Financial crisis was in 2008, and I still continued to work. And then in 2010, I got the bubble assignment to work in the headquarters of G Capital for more or less 10 months. But until then, I stayed, and then I had that chance to work overseas. But that was my learning.
If you could do it again, what would you do differently?
I don't have an answer, Catherine, because that reflects my maturity back
Ah,
then.
you just understood that about yourself more.
The advice I would give to Yoko of 2007
Mm,
now, anyone who is given opportunity which they think is strange, stretched, and challenging, I would say if the opportunity comes to you, embrace it and grab it and then thrive. That's the advice I would give to Yoko of 2007
right.
now. My maturity, obviously, back then didn't have that judgment.
Wow. Very good. Anything else around here? Maybe some other advice that you received that helped you to go further forward? Perhaps it was even advice that was really, really good that you received around this time.
I shared this with you already, but the advice I got from CEO and HR lead when I joined the management team about expectations for my contribution being legal, I think was very helpful and important, especially for people who want to pursue the legal career as in-house, because the company can benefit from you beyond the areas.
Yes, that's right. So you being more of a business minded or other areas outside of law that would be beneficial for not only you, but through you for the company.
Correct. Another advice I got, which is I'm still taking from heart, is to be yourself in
Yes.
leading as a leader. There are many great role models, but the way you lead depend on your styles, and people will know when whether or not you're being authentic. And authenticity is important. And be yourself. It's simple, but it has so profound and so much depth in it, in my views.
Right. Can you describe what authentic looks like, or is it just something you feel or you know when you see it or feel it? Do you know what
For,
that means? Yeah, I'm interested just to think what authenticity looks like. Or is it when
for
someone says something and then they do something different?
well, there are many aspects, Catherine. You're right. Walk and talk part is if you say something but your act do not follow, and the people will
Right.
not follow. So that's
Yeah.
one part about being authentic, and also about leadership style. Some people may have very cheerful, positive mindset all the time and can have go-go approach, but you can't expect that from the leader with reserved personalities. But instead of being in front of the group and leading with the flag, somebody may come from backward as if they were sort of leading the sheep to making sure that the team creates the harmony to lead a team. So there are many leadership
You are
styles,
right.
and choosing the style that suits you is also critical in me being effective in my views.
Ah, you know what? When you were speaking there and talked about sheep, I thought about obviously New Zealand, but I thought about the shepherd at the front of the flock leads the
Right.
sheep in that way. But especially in somewhere like New Zealand, there's always a dog that is running from the back, that is bringing all the other group that are at the back end of the flock through and
Hmm.
up the fields and over the hills. And that's how I see what you've just said is there's sometimes the leader that's the shepherd at the front, but it could be the really smart, fast at the back kind of leadership coming through like the dog and bringing other people up through in a different style.
Thank you for putting that into the clear picture.
Sometimes the leader does need to be the shepherd at the front, sometimes the dog at the back, but in both ways, a different kind of leader.
Correct. And then in terms of leadership, I read an article by the Harvard Business Review because you now mentioned about the dog being guiding and the shepherd leading on the front. There is a Harvard Business Review article about adaptive leadership, which, in my understanding, whose theme is that, especially in this like world of lots of complexity and fast pace, nobody knows the answers, and it's important that the people on the front are empowered to feel empowered to come up with the solutions, and each one being the leaders, and the team organization's leaders job is not necessarily just leading all the time, but making sure that the people in every layer feel empowered to do their roles and
Yeah.
lead.
Yeah, because sometimes the shepherd stands at the gate and the flock are going through the gate, but they're being led by that other, maybe the dog changes into one of the team members. I'm not sure. Adaptive leadership, we have to get that link from you so that we can pop that into the show notes. It sounds like a good one to read. Thank you for mentioning that. So in this season 10, we're doing some signature big questions. So I think I'd like to go and ask you a couple of those questions, but I hope I can ask you about a pivotal moment in your career because I think every career has a kind of defining moment. Maybe it's a decision or an event or challenge. And you've talked a lot about some of the events that have come up in your life so far. But was there a moment for you that was truly pivotal? And in that case, what did you learn and how did it really shape you and your leadership style or shape your career path?
I could think of two moments that really had strong influence on me, among others. And the first about financial crisis. That was when, because of the war situation, G's commercial finance business was to provide financing to our customers. But with financial crisis and liquidation issues, we could no longer fund our financing commitments, and our business people who thrive to get all these financial contracts with customers had to go to these customers and ask them to cancel these.
Oh,
Imagine the
yeah.
salespeople whose job is to get these contracts had to go back. And then clearly, if I'm asked if this is legally binding, there are all legally binding contracts. But even then, the salespeople had to go and ask for their permission to cancel. And it was just heartbreaking imagining what they had to go through by going to the customers and do this. Whenever I have some hard issues, my thoughts always go back to that situation compared to what these salespeople had to do back then. I could do anything. So that
Mm.
was a pivotal moment. And then totally changing the gear, I feel now with AI, the way we work is really transforming, and working for a company that has means to provide and also have experience to share. I think we as lawyers, especially beyond being legal counsel, our mission is to sort of share our experiences of how we can work differently by leveraging AI. I think it is shifting my career, not only my career, but I feel the legal career in general.
Yes, most definitely. Thank you for those two examples. And we will come back to AI because how could we miss that because of the current company where you are at Microsoft? So we will come back. I'm going to ask you one more of these signature questions as well, as I get this a lot. People want to know how to be what you are doing, how to be Yoko Oshima doing what you do. And I often get this asked by mentees or young lawyers. And I thought it would be great to ask you because they see your success now and they may not have seen your early chapters. But if someone did ask you that, Yoko, how would you answer that? How do I get to be like you? What advice would you give that person?
Catherine, it's such a humbling question to be asked because nobody has to be me. But having said that, when I look back my path, I think I'm faithful to my interests, and I made my decision based on whether or not I get excited by the opportunities I get. And also, I value the people I work with. So I don't think I ever put social hierarchy factor in my career development. Of course, you need to think about seniority in your position, and I already shared the learning and my immature judgments I made in the past. But at the end, whether or not you can be happy and you feel you can learn in that role matters more to me and my choices I made.
I see. Not the title or, as you said, social hierarchy and
Yes,
seniority. Yeah, it's
and yes,
important, but happiness and joy and in what you're doing and learning from the role that you're in is more important.
yes, I think so. And then also seeking support to
Yeah.
other was. something I have not been shy about. And I think that helped me in getting guidance or advice. Some people may feel reluctant to seek support to others, feeling that they are being vulnerable. But on the contrary, being able to seek the support in a way shows your strength that you're comfortable about your limit, and nobody can do everything, and it's okay, and it's totally natural to seek support is another message I would like to share with people.
Yeah, there's some very good information there for someone who wants to be Yoko. Is, yeah, think about some of these things that are maybe not as important for some people, right? So some people may think social hierarchy is important, but you're focusing on, again, a different kind of importance: happiness, learning to be, loving a role and learning in it, seeking support, and also treating that vulnerability as a real strength, knowing your limits about your confidence and comfort level. I think that's really amazing advice. So let's see the carbon copy of you in the future maybe coming through.
Well, no, nobody has to be carbon copy of myself, and
Yeah.
everyone has different amazing strengths. And but
Yes.
I would love to contribute to, especially people more junior to me, growing to be wonderful leaders in the futures, and that's the another area I feel passionate about.
Yes. So along the way, there might be some things that you always did, but then something perhaps that you unlearned. Leadership can often be not so much about adding more and adding more, but actually letting go of something. Is there anything that you've had to unlearn in order to grow as a lawyer and a leader?
Another great question, Catherine, about unlearning. I think, especially managing people, is something I continue to learn, unlearn, and relearn. For example, I shared that in 2007, I suddenly started to lead a team and manage the team. And then I learned to manage a team and I felt comfortable. But now looking back, I was more or less managing the team with the legal background, whether they are qualified as lawyers or non lawyers, legal or compliance. But when I joined Microsoft, my role covers both commercial legal and government affairs that work on policy shaping. And people from in the government have different backgrounds and different skill sets from commercial legal lawyers. In the beginning, I think I was sort of trying to apply the same management approach that I built in my past 14 years of my legal experience. Of course, I know in my head that the management style depends on each team member's strength and background. But overall, I realized that I had to unlearn and relearn about leading that government affairs team versus commercial legal team.
Right, it's got far more diverse than a pure, shall we say, legal team. Yeah.
Yes.
So how do you do that? I mean, this current role that you've just mentioned is corporate, it's external and legal affairs. It's such a powerful combination and amazing intersection of the law and policy and government affairs. How on earth do you manage the three different parts and how do they interact?
Well, in terms of managing, I think I still can do a lot more and I'm still on their journey, but I'm just blessed with the talented members who are great as professionals and great some people as managers. And these like legal lenses and government affairs lenses with policy, especially in the tech world, these three elements coming together is so important because in the tech, there are so many fields that are not covered by existing laws. So even the governments and everywhere in the world, for example, in AI Act, that it was last 2 or 3 years that the government started to implement the law. So how the law should be is important as analyzing the legal implication of the existing laws.
Right, it's very different, and especially in such an evolving area of the law and government, obviously, too, right? With this area of AI and what's just every single day is changing. And so trying to manage those differently must be super challenging each day, but also very interesting and exciting.
Interesting and exciting for sure. And yes, the policy, because there was no law in that area, it's important to implement the law that benefits the society. And I feel blessed about having that opportunity to get involved in that world.
Right. And so is the policy making more general and then sifting down into the laws and the government external affairs work? Is that how it is? It's more like an umbrella and then you're doing the specifics further in the different layers underneath?
Policy includes all the layers, international treaties and domestic laws.
Right. So you're thinking about all kinds of different things at the same time, making sure you're not missing out anything and covering the treaty over there and the domestic law over here.
Because they're all intertwined, and since the
Yeah.
government is also looking into treaties or international agreements
Mm.
together with their domestic laws, so it's important that like we also keep up with all the initiatives.
Yeah, thank you. Is there any one particular initiative or shift that you are really proud about that you've been contributing to there?
Well, it's maybe too much to say we are contributing to, but for example, Japanese government did a fantastic job in coming up with the Hiroshima AI process as G7 chair in 2023 that puts the international framework for AI governance. And then now they are expanding that for AI, Hiroshima AI process for the countries beyond G7 can
Mm.
join to endorse that principles and code of conduct. And Japan AI Act recently passed the lower house, and it's expected to pass as Japanese law during this diet session. But that in also spirit is aligned with the Hiroshima AI process and promoting the AI utilization while taking the risk-based approach. And Microsoft, because that's really aligned with our approach to AI, so we closely approach and engage with the governments all around the world to really encourage that move. And
Mm.
I feel that was a very meaningful work for us to do.
Meaningful, very concrete too, and you can tie it back amazingly to having Japan as the chair of the G7 at that time, that it happened in Japan. It may have happened in another country if they were the chair, but it almost brings it home closer to you because it was at the Hiroshima summit that this happened.
And it was lucky as a Japan team that, yes, that was the year Japan had that chair role, and kudos to the Japanese government that they took the leadership in making that happen.
Very interesting. And as well as this, your daily work and working in these roles, you've also got another role outside of work. I'm putting speech marks around outside because I know very much that you are a fantastic and one of your fans has called it a phenomenal supporter of both personally and professionally of LGBTQ rights. And I know you're deeply committed to diversity and inclusion, and you are on the non-profit board of Lawyers for LGBT and Allies Network, LLAN or LAN. Some people call it LAN, don't they? But LAN. But I did get a great question from one of your friends in the community who asked me to ask you a question, what advice you would might give to people who are on the fence about supporting LGBTQ rights and why you believe it's important to be an LGBTQ ally. And I also was asking you myself personally why this mission is so important for you. So, putting all of that together, tell us a bit more about your purpose in this area.
About LGBTQ rights, at the end of the day, this is a matter of human rights. I remember when I talked to a gay person who is working for same-sex marriage rights in Japan, and he commented that he's the same human beings as heterosexual, but is not given the rights other heterosexual people have. He feels like he's always a secondary citizen. Or the same sex couples that have kids but are not married can have a risk of not being able to go to the hospital when their kids are sent to the hospital. And the transgender people also have many struggles. And when it's about their struggles as a human being, it is basic human rights to me. It's at the end of the day, the company has a meritocracy culture, and business can make the stronger, better decision when they have people with diverse background. And from that perspective, it is important to have that meritocracy where people can feel who he is, she is, or they are, and feel they're accepted so that they can maximize their performance.
Yeah, I guess too. And that's really amazing what you've said. And but how can we help people who are thinking it's not to do with them? It's not my business. It's not something that I need to care about because I'm not LGBTQ or I don't know anybody who is. Sometimes people will just think that's not concerning them. Is there something you've learned from being on the board and involved with LAN that has helped you sort of be able to give others advice or some suggestions that might help them without telling them what to do, but how they can be an ally?
Well, for example, I'm left handed.
Right.
And then when you ask people around that whether there is anybody who doesn't know people who are left-handed, I would say that there's like nobody, like everyone knows
Yes.
about like the people who are left-handed.
Yeah.
And the ratio of LGBTQ people is similar to the left-handed people
There you
ratio.
go. Yep.
And that means that there may be
Mm.
people who are LGBTQ in your community. And it's important to keep in that mind that your thoughtless word can hurt these people. And your daughter or your friends may be LGBTQ. And when you get to know someone who is close to you, has the issues, then you like to support them.
Exactly right. And I do love your left-handed person analogy because I think that really brings it home because it's not different to that. And we all do know left-handed people. And I've got a left-handed friend, and I remember trying to find products for her that were left-handed friendly. And that's just a simple way you're making me feel and understand even further how I can use this analogy to help others who maybe don't quite get it. But it's a nice
Mm.
soft way of putting it. I really love that you've used this analogy because it does make sense. Why wouldn't it be that way? Love is love. And why would you not help a left handed person in the same way you would help somebody else who might be LGBTQ?
Thank you,
Thank
Catherine.
you.
And in the Western world, that stigma of left-handed may not be that much, and it is not really the case anymore in Japan too. But I remember when I was growing up, and I think when I was 3 or 4 years old, I was on the train with my mother and the old lady sitting in front of me. Somehow I was eating something with my spoon with my left hand, and that lady said, "Oh my, this girl is left-handed. Oh, how a poor
Wow.
girl." Then
Poor
I was,
girl.
yes.
Oh, dear.
So I was like, "Oh, I am a poor girl."
Wow.
So being left-handed, although there are some stigma, but the scale and depth of the suffers the LGBTQ population had way, way different as
Way
one can.
different, but it's a very good. Really love that you've shared that. I'm going to take it to heart personally, but I also think if others are listening here, they will understand that that was an excellent way to portray it. Thank you very, very much. And I think too, because you're on this board, there might be some others who are thinking, I never knew there was such a board I could be part of. How did you find Lan, and how do you find a board like that to be able to give in a way to a non-profit? And how can people probably start preparing to find such a position and really contribute and change people's views and way of thinking, which is what you're doing on a daily basis now?
I'm currently on the two nonprofit boards. One is LLAN that you kindly described, and another is Earth Company that is trying to make changes for the social cause. And for those board roles, I didn't pursue the role boards, but I started to get involved in the organization's activities or initiatives because I shared their values, and then the board came along. So it may be different from the way you see the board in the for profit business world, but at least for nonprofit, I think you will enrich your life more by looking for the organizations where you share the values and you like to support in one way or the other, and then start from there. And then being on the board happened to be the ways I could contribute to these two organizations that I have lots of respect and lots of passion.
Mm. I think you're right, though. And I'm probably in some respect, some people on for profit boards have chosen for the name value of a company,
Mm.
perhaps, or the remuneration. But I think the approach you have outlined of going by values and getting involved in the activities of that board and the organization before you actually want to get on to being a board member and not even thinking about the board member role, but getting involved in the activities and aligning the values, that's super critical, I think, for both. It's harder to get involved in activities for a for profit, but certainly aligning the values is one. I guess if we've got a Venn diagram, that's the bit in the middle that should really be part of everybody's decision for any kind of organization. Yeah.
Thank you for your comments, and I fully agree. And I have a friend who recently started to be on some boards. And Catherine, I appreciate that you're very experienced in the for being on the board for profit companies, and you're very highly respected in that area. My friend who recently started to be on the boards, when she chooses the company, she says like she looks into why her, not others, and what does she as an individual can contribute to that role. She weighs that factor before the name and remuneration. But having said that, everyone has different values and what's
Yeah.
important factors. So everybody's approach is different.
So true. And there's a number of things pop in my mind there. Why her? Why me? You know, why have I been selected? And I know I
Mhm.
turned down one board role because it was purely because they wanted a tick box for a female. And that didn't sit well with me. I think probably getting in and being able to make changes was one thing, but the mindset was already, let's just get anybody as long as they're female and we'll tick it. And that didn't really sit well. And I think the other one, in an interview, I was asked a question and I gave my honest reply with integrity. And I could see them all sort of looking at each other like I hadn't given the right reply that they wanted to hear. And yet I had stayed within my lines and my boundaries of what I knew I would do in such a situation. So I was declined, but I'm so pleased that I didn't think about giving them a reply that might make them feel good. Yeah. So I just love this conversation because values takes you through your whole life and every single thing that you do, literally every single thing you do.
Catherine, that's so true. And when it comes to the for-profit board, right now I don't have capacity to do the for-profit, but in the future I'd to love to learn from you and get guidance and advice when I reach that stage. And about having value as a core in your choices, it's been such an important part of my journey. And thank you for verbalizing it. you clarify my approach to
Thank
my
you.
journey.
I'd be most happy to help you. All right, let's talk a little bit about AI and tech again. I mean, where you are at Microsoft, oh my goodness, forefront of digital transformation. I love your CEO in Japan, and your team is amazing. I've been able to meet many of them and look forward to meeting more. But how do you stay ahead of the game in AI? And I tell you what, another friend asked a question, especially for legal teams, how people can get confident with AI in their legal teams. So I've asked you two questions in one almost, but you personally, how do you stay ahead? And then advice for perhaps legal teams and how that they can start using AI in their legal work streams and get confident with it. Because this seems to be a question that comes up a lot.
Yes, Catherine, I'm not sure if I'm staying ahead of this game, but together with the teams, we are constantly learning to keep up with the new technology. And this is not one person's effort. Microsoft as a company is making efforts to make sure that each one of us continues to learn and uses it, because it's not convincing if we don't use it and try to convince others that technology is useful. So we as customer zero try to use it, and we as a company also are trying to make many initiatives to encourage that by making some hackathon. We even have legal hackathon to share the use cases, and also we have some rewards for someone who uses it or being a great AI ambassador. So the efforts are needed at individual level, team level, company level, at like multi-layer levels.
Oh, wow. What's a legal hackathon in this case?
Oh, share the use cases from all around the world. From in CLAB, Corporate External and Legal Affairs, we have over 2,000 members in 54 countries right now. So when the hackathon runs, so they have submission period where use cases are gathered, and then we have a vote where we vote the great use cases, and then these cases are shared and people get awarded.
I love it. That's so good. And then you get to hear about so many different ways of people are using it and
Correct.
what's worked, what hasn't worked, or, oh, that's okay to use it that way. Oh, I see. So giving it a go, because I think sometimes people want to use it, but they're not sure even the first step. This is legal and I'm a lawyer. Can I share this information? Can I put this information into a tool? So some even hesitate at that very, very before zero stage and give up. But you're saying this is a great way, right? A legal hackathon, give people the invitation opportunity to experiment and then share it.
Yes, addressing the concerns or being mindful about the concerns people have around confidentiality or copyrights or data privacy are also critical. So you're right, and it's natural, especially for legal counsel, to be careful and making sure about these concerns. But once we come up with some framework to manage it, then use it so that people can use their time more on the substance strategic work, being released from task oriented work would enrich their everyday in their work.
Right. Excellent. Well, I hope that's been useful for the person who asked me that question. I'll let you know later who it was, Yoko. So lawyers should just really try to engage with the tech and not feel too overwhelmed with the pace of change. Be a learning mindset because it is changing very, very often. And you are at a company where you may hear about changes perhaps a little bit earlier than others, but it certainly catches up with us very quickly because it changes so often. But just to be confident and try to use it and not feel overwhelmed, is that what you'd say, or is there something else you would say to those who are feeling just sighing and not quite sure what to do next about the use of AI and tech?
I think same as other new technologies, just try it. And then it requires discipline in the first several months until you reach the stage you feel comfortable. It requires discipline, and it's natural that you feel more tempted to go back to your old existing work approach. But it's same as training a new person, especially when you work in an organization. There's a limit in one person can do, right? And then you start to train, let's say, first year associate. And of course, first year associate doesn't come up with the perfect quality work from the beginning, and you have to train, and it takes time. And if you like to leverage AI, it takes time to train the AI as well as to yourself. So to get to the point that you have some tool to leverage to make your life easier, I think one needs to be prepared to invest some time in the beginning. But that
Absolutely.
time will be beneficial. It will benefit you in the midterm. Like it's not even the midterm. In several months, you'll have more time to work on more valuable or strategic work.
Yeah. It's like anything, isn't it? If we just give it a one go, like riding a bicycle and give up because we can't do it, we're not going to learn. And so trying it, working out how to do it, knowing what works, what doesn't. But you're right. It's really natural to feel tempted to go back to old ways of doing things. But if you keep pushing through, you might actually find it really gives you such rewards. And absolutely, it's like a new person on the team, a new associate who doesn't know everything. So you've got to bear with it and have some patience.
Yes, you're absolutely right,
Love it.
Catherine.
Well, I'm going to switch again as we're heading towards the latter part of our interview, but I did want to ask you about work-life harmony and how you manage that, because you did share with me before today that you are very much involved in art and music and nature, and you love spending time with your family and friends. So, how do you carve out the space to do that?
For you to be functional in the long term, I think it's important, especially as someone leading the team. Well, first of all, I would like my team to take some time off because work is an important essence of life, but that is not everything. And for encouraging the team, I also need to role model in that piece because, again, walk and talk. If I tell my team, take time off and claw back your time and refresh yourself, and if I working 24/7, for example, it's not convincing. And two, for me to do better, recharging is necessary. So I think it's my responsibility in a way to recharge so that I can work more efficiently and I can perform better, if
Well,
that
that's,
makes sense.
yeah, it does. And I don't know that I've heard someone call it your responsibility to do it. Yes. What a great way of saying it. It's your responsibility to do many other things as well. Deliver your work on time, turn up at the office at the designated hour, turn the switch on for a meeting online. But also, it's your responsibility to refresh and be at your top of your game by relaxing, getting your rest, but also making sure that others see that so that you can be the role model for displaying that to others to do it as well. Brilliant. I heard you're practicing piano again.
Yes.
Any performances in the works or anything else coming up? Can we hear you play?
I started playing the piano when I was 5 and continued to play until I was mid 20s, and I restarted again during COVID. And I had a piano performance in April, but I played Grabin's Etude 812, but I was not really proud of that.
Wow. I want to hear about it next time then when you're performing so we can go and see you and give you a cheers and make
Oh,
sure that
thank
yeah,
you.
it'd be
Thank
lovely.
you for saying that.
So, final questions then about just perhaps some advice for leaders or lawyers who are coming up the ranks now. You've given some tips along the way, but is there anything else that you would like to share about lawyers who are coming up through their careers and what they should be thinking about, especially in this fast paced, tech driven society that we're now in?
There are a couple of things. In terms of thinking about career choices, as we discussed, asking yourself where your value lies and what's important to you would help
Mm.
shape your career. And two, being able to ask the right questions would be important and also help you in whatever path you choose. And third, I think people who succeed tend to have growth mindset, who is humble and willing to learn and grow.
It's interesting because do you look for that when you're trying to hire someone? Like if you're hiring them or mentoring them, are you looking for these kinds of aspects, the values, skill sets, perhaps having that growth mindset as well?
Catherine, you shed light from a different aspect, and now you ask, yes, I do, especially in terms of growth mindset. I think people who are sticking with the status quo struggle to be agile, adjust, and grow will struggle. So, yes, especially in this fast paced world where things are rapidly changing, yes, I look for people who are clear about their values and who are able to ask right questions and who have growth mindset with agility, boldness, and curiosity.
Wow, good. Well, let's do the final round of fun questions. We've had some fun already, but you talked about the Harvard Law Review before. But is there any other book that you may have read that has changed your view about leadership or about the law?
I realize that I tend to answer two when you ask for one.
Oh,
Thank you.
two is good. We love the double bonus. The bonus from Yoko is great. If you give us
Um,
two. Yes,
well,
please.
first are Microsoft President Brad Smith's tool and weapons because that shows how technology that can change the world be a tool and weapon, and that's why we have to deliver technology in a responsible way. So that's first book I thought of. And I read this book a few years ago, and Catherine, you
Hmm.
likely know this, Erin Meyer's culture map when I read that few years ago, and it shows how people think differently and approach things differently depending on where they are from. It was really interesting to connect the different people's approach with their background.
Yes, I've heard Culture Map is a great book, so I will actually go and get it and read it. One other good question I'd love to ask you is if you weren't a lawyer, what other career path might you have chosen? Is it pianist? I wonder.
When I was in the fourth grade, I wanted to be a carpenter, and,
No,
and
really?
back then, I guess I didn't know the sophisticated term such as architect, and I don't think I have skill set to be an architect, but architect is one of my dream jobs.
Oh, amazing. Well, I think the next question is pretty much ties into that. If you could master one new skill instantly, what would it be? Maybe to be an
Mm,
architect, you'd have to do the drafting, wouldn't
yeah,
you? Drawing,
yes, like drawing or painting.
painting or drawing, right. And you have traveled to many countries and cities. Where are your most favorite places to visit and why?
I was in Bali until Saturday,
Oh,
and being in Bali and being with the people who are really trying to help the problems of the world really sort of reminded me how blessed I am and made me think again the contribution I should make in my current role to make this society better. And Bali
yeah.
has cultures and great natures, but there are so many beautiful places in this world, so it's really hard to choose one.
But you can go with that. I will let you have that because Bali is your most recent experience. So I think that's fantastic. Yeah, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
today. I've really enjoyed it. Is there something that people would love to ask you some more about? Could they get in touch with you?
Of course.
And that would be through LinkedIn.
A LinkedIn might be the easiest way.
Fantastic. Well, find an event that you're attending, that you're presenting at. There's a couple coming up I've seen you're a panelist at, and thinking, find Yoko and go and see her and ask her one great question. I'm sure you'd be open to doing that. But
I'd be happy to.
thank you. Thank you so much for joining me on Lawyer on Air. It's been a real pleasure. And I think if nobody's enjoyed this, then they shouldn't be listening to Lawyer on Air. But I'm pretty sure everyone's enjoyed this. And I really do ask my listeners, if it has inspired you in some way, please do think about subscribing to Lawyer on Air and sharing this episode with someone you know could really benefit from the things that we talked about today with Yoko. Your feedback also, if you give us a rating, really helps this show to be seen by other people. But that's all for us today. Thank you for being here and see you back on the next episode. Cheers, kampai, and bye for now.